1 year after Admiral Jack Morrison walked out of the council chambers, the galaxy looked like a completely different place. Fleet Admiral Chris Thompson stood on the observation deck of the UHSS Constitution, watching as the largest free trade convoy in galactic history passed through the Kepler Junction. Ships from dozens of species moved together in perfect formation. There were the sleek vessels of the Altarian Republic, the bulky cargo haulers of the Orion Mining Syndicate, and the elegant passenger liners of the Centauri Free Worlds. All of them flew under the protection of human escort ships, but more importantly, all of them chose their own destinations. Admiral, incoming message from the convoy leader, reported Commander Julie Garcia from her position at the communications station. They are requesting permission to proceed to the Vega system for independent trade negotiations. Chris smiled. Permission granted. Safe travels. A year ago, that simple exchange would have been impossible. The Council controlled all major trade routes, decided who could trade with whom, and took a percentage of every transaction. Now, species were free to make their own deals and keep their own profits. Dr. Rachel Miller, the Alliance's chief xenological advisor, joined Chris at the observation window. The transformation has been remarkable, she said. We are seeing the birth of true galactic democracy. The changes had happened faster than anyone expected. Once the Council's communication network fell under human control, the truth began to spread like wildfire. Species that had been oppressed for centuries learned that resistance was not only possible but successful. The Altarian Republic was the first to break away. Their blue-skinned people had always been skilled traders, but Council regulations had kept them from reaching their full potential. Within weeks of declaring independence, Altarian merchants were making deals across the galaxy. The Orion Syndicate followed soon after. These tough miners had been forced to sell their rare metals to the Council at fixed prices while buying manufactured goods at inflated rates. Now they could trade directly with whoever offered the best deals. Even some of the Council's core members began to reconsider their position. The Centauri Empire, proud and militaristic, had initially declared war on humanity. But when their outer colonies voted to join the Human Alliance, they realized that fighting would only destroy what they were trying to protect. Status report on the former Council worlds, Chris requested. Julie checked her displays. The Andromedans have signed a peace treaty with us and are requesting observer status in the Alliance. The Veltar Collective has withdrawn to their core systems and closed their borders. The Saurian Collective is asking for protection from Council retaliation. Chris nodded. The galaxy was reorganizing itself along new lines. Some species, like the Andromedans, were adapting to the new reality. Others, like the Veltar, were retreating into isolation. Still others were seeking human protection from the remnants of the old Council, but the most dramatic changes were happening among the smaller species. Worlds that had been forgotten or ignored by the Council were suddenly finding their voices. The aquatic Nereid Commonwealth had formed a trading partnership with human underwater colonies. The insectoid hive worlds were sharing agricultural technology with human farming planets. Ambassador Kate Phillips was now serving as the first human representative to the reformed Galactic Assembly, a new organization based on cooperation rather than domination. The Assembly met in the same chamber where the Council had once demanded humanity's surrender, but the atmosphere was completely different. The old Council ruled through fear, Kate told the assembled delegates. They told us that strength meant the ability to crush others. Today, we offer a different definition. True strength protects freedom instead of destroying it. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Species that had never been allowed to speak in the old Council chambers now had equal voices in the new Assembly. Decisions were made by consensus, rather than force. Trade agreements were negotiated freely instead of imposed by decree, but not everyone was happy with the changes. Speaker Zethkalar and his remaining supporters had retreated to a fortress world called Nexus Prime, where they continued to claim authority over the galaxy. They had declared humanity an existential threat and called for total war against the Alliance. However, the war they wanted would never come. Most of their former subjects had abandoned them. Their military was a shadow of its former strength, and they faced an opponent that had learned the most important lesson of galactic politics. Overwhelming force was less effective than offering something better. Lieutenant Ben Roberts, monitoring communications from his station on the Constitution, looked up with a grin. Admiral, we have received formal requests for Alliance membership from 15 new species today. And sir, 3 of them are former Council Core worlds. Chris felt a deep satisfaction. The transformation was complete. Humanity had not just walked away from the Council's galaxy. They had built something better to replace it. The new galactic order was not perfect. There were still disputes between species, still conflicts over resources and territory. But these problems were being solved through negotiation and compromise rather than conquest and oppression. Dr. Miller provided the scientific perspective. We are witnessing the emergence of a truly cooperative galactic civilization. Species are sharing technology, resources, and knowledge freely. The rate of innovation and discovery has increased dramatically. The evidence was everywhere. Medical advances that would have taken decades under the old system were being shared across species lines within months. New technologies were being developed through cooperative research programs. Even art and culture were flourishing as different species learned from each other. President Mary Watson, now serving her second term as leader of the Earth government, addressed the Alliance Council with words that would be remembered for generations. We did not walk away from those talks because we were afraid. We walked away because we refused to accept that might makes right. Today we have proven that there is a better way. The human experiment in galactic democracy was working. Species that had been enemies for centuries were learning to work together. Trade was flourishing. Innovation was accelerating. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy was truly free. As Chris Thompson watched another convoy of free traders pass through human-protected space, he thought about Admiral Morrison and the brave decision that had started it all. Walking away from those talks had been the hardest thing humanity had ever done. But it had also been the best thing for the entire galaxy. The aliens had thought they were punishing humanity with isolation and threats. Instead, they had given them the motivation to build a better world. The galaxy's greatest regret was not that the humans had walked away from the talks. It was that it had taken so long for someone to do it. In the end, humanity had kept their promise. They had faced the consequences of defying the Council. But the consequences had turned out to be freedom, prosperity, and hope for the entire galaxy. Captain Alex Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching the stars blur past as the ship dropped out of hyperspace. 3 months had passed since the Galaxy Council's debate, and now he was leading the mission that would determine humanity's future. The crew was mixed, just as the Council had ordered. Half were human, half were alien, and everyone was watching everyone else. The ship itself was a marvel of galactic engineering. Built by the Andromedan shipyards, it combined the best technology from dozens of species. The bridge was designed to accommodate different forms of life, with some stations filled with water for aquatic species and others kept in near vacuum for energy beings. Alex had spent weeks learning how to work with such a diverse crew. Dr. Sam Phillips, the mission's chief scientist, looked up from his console. He was a quiet man with steady hands and a mind that worked like a computer. Captain, we're approaching the Nexus station. It's bigger than the reports suggested. Alex nodded and turned to his communications officer. Kelly, try to make contact with the station. Kelly Wright had been chosen for this mission because she had a gift for languages. She could speak 17 different alien tongues and had a way of making even the most hostile beings want to talk to her. She worked her controls with practiced ease. No response, Captain. The station appears to be in standby mode. The alien crew members were equally impressive. Telkar, the Andromedan engineer, was a 7-foot-tall being with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His people were known for their logical thinking and perfect engineering skills. He rarely spoke, but when he did, everyone listened. Whisper of stars. The ethereal navigator floated in a special chamber filled with glowing mist. Her people were psychic and could sense things that others couldn't. "What do you think, Telkar?" Alex asked. "Is it safe to approach?" The Andromedan studied his instruments carefully. The station's power readings are stable. Hull integrity is at 97%. There are no obvious signs of danger, but that does not mean we should be careless. Whisper of Stars spoke in her musical voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I sense something strange about this place. It feels dying, like it has been expecting someone to arrive." Alex made his decision. "Take us in slowly. Everyone stay alert." As they approached the Nexus station, its true size became clear. The structure was enormous, easily the size of a small moon. It was built in a style that none of them recognized, with flowing curves and surfaces that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. The entire station was made of some kind of metal that appeared to be alive. Dr. Phillips worked furiously at his console. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the station. The technology is unlike anything in our databases. This could be a discovery that changes everything we know about galactic history." The docking bay doors opened as they approached, as if the station knew they were coming. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. In 20 years of space travel, he had never seen anything like this. Tony Barnes, the ship's mechanic, whistled softly. He was a man who could fix anything with moving parts and had an intuitive understanding of how machines worked. "That's some welcome committee. The station systems are more advanced than anything I've ever seen." As they docked, the station's artificial gravity took hold of their ship. The lights in the docking bay flickered on, revealing a vast chamber that could have held a dozen ships their size. The walls were covered in symbols that seemed to move and change as they watched. "Atmosphere is breathable for most species," reported Kelly. "Temperature is comfortable. No sign of hostile life." "Forms," Alex assembled the away team. He would lead, with Dr. Phillips, Tony, and Kelly representing the humans. Telkar and Whisper of Stars would represent the alien crew members. 2 security officers, 1 human and 1 from the warrior species known as the Corellian Guardians, would provide protection. As they stepped onto the station, their boots echoed in the vast chamber. The walls seemed to pulse with a soft light, and symbols appeared and disappeared in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The air smelled of ozone and something else, something that reminded each crew member of home, no matter what planet they came from. "The station is responding to our presence," Dr. Phillips observed. "Look at the walls. The symbols are changing based on our location." Tony knelt beside a control panel that had emerged from the floor. "This is incredible. The technology is so advanced that it might as well be magic, but I think I can figure out how it works." Telkar examined the panel with his precise scientific mind. "The construction methods are unknown to us. The materials themselves appear to be programmable matter. This is beyond even Andromedan engineering." Whisper of Stars floated beside them, her misty form swirling with concern. "The station is not just responding to us, it is learning from us, studying us. I can feel its attention like a weight on my mind." Suddenly, the chamber filled with a soft chiming sound. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing symbols that gradually shifted into forms that each crew member could understand. For the humans, it appeared as English text. For Telkar, it appeared as Andromedan mathematical equations. For Whisper of Stars, it appeared as colors and emotions. The message was simple: "Welcome, candidates. The evaluation will now begin." Alex felt his heart rate increase. "Evaluation? What kind of evaluation?" The display changed, showing a 3-dimensional map of the station. Red dots appeared throughout the structure, indicating areas of interest. A countdown timer appeared, showing 24 hours. "Complete the challenges within the time limit." The display read. "Failure results in termination of the evaluation process." Tony looked up from the control panel with a grin. "Well, that doesn't sound ominous at all." Kelly checked her equipment. "Captain, I'm detecting movement throughout the station. Something is activating." Telkar's instruments were showing readings that made no sense. The station's power output. is increasing exponentially. Whatever systems were dormant are now coming online. Dr. Phillips studied the holographic map. These challenge points are spread throughout the station. Some are in areas that will be difficult to reach. Others are in sections that my scans can't penetrate. Alex made a command decision. We split into teams. Phillips and I will take the central core. Tony and Telkar will handle the engineering sections. Kelly and Whisper of Stars will investigate the areas that seem to be designed for communication and navigation. As they prepared to separate, the station's voice spoke again. Each challenge is designed to test different aspects of intelligence, creativity, and survival. Success requires not just knowledge, but the ability to think in ways that transcend normal limitations. The human crew members exchanged glances. They had been chosen for this mission because they were the best at their jobs, but they were also chosen because they were human. The Galaxy Council wanted to see how humans would perform under pressure, and it looked like they were going to find out. As the team separated and headed into the depths of the ancient station, none of them realized that they were about to become part of a test that had been running for millions of years. The Nexus station had been waiting for the right species to arrive, and now it would discover if humanity was what it had been looking for all along. The first challenge appeared when Dr. Phillips and Captain Rodriguez reached the central core of the Nexus station. The massive chamber was filled with floating geometric shapes that pulsed with different colors. Each shape had symbols carved into its surface, and they moved in patterns that seemed almost like a dance. "It's some kind of puzzle," Dr. Phillips said, studying the shapes through his scanner. "The symbols represent mathematical concepts, but they are arranged in ways that don't follow any logic I understand." Alex watched the shapes move for several minutes. The pattern was hypnotic, almost beautiful. "What happens if we get it wrong?" "Before Phillips could answer, the chamber filled with a low, warning tone. The countdown timer on the wall showed they had lost an hour just watching the shapes move. They needed to act fast. Meanwhile, Tony Barnes and Telkar had found their way to the engineering section. The room was filled with machinery that seemed to be built from living metal. Pipes and conduits grew from the walls like vines, and the air hummed with energy that made their teeth ache. "This is beyond anything in our databases," Telkar said, his forearms moving over his instruments. "The power systems are based on principles we don't understand. The energy output should be impossible." Tony knelt beside one of the machines and placed his hand on its surface. The metal felt warm, almost alive. "You know what? I think you're looking at this wrong. You're trying to understand it like a normal machine, but what if it's not?" The Andromedan's logical mind struggled with the concept. "What do you mean? What if this isn't technology at all? What if it's biology? What if the whole station is alive?" As if responding to his words, the machine under Tony's hand began to glow. The metal surface rippled like water, and suddenly Tony could feel the station's heartbeat through his palm. The knowledge flowed into his mind, not through his ears or eyes, but directly into his thoughts. In another part of the station, Kelly Wright and Whisper of Stars faced their own challenge. They stood in a room filled with floating screens showing images from across the galaxy. The screens showed wars, disasters, and suffering from 1,000 different worlds. "I can feel the pain," Whisper of Stars said, her misty form trembling. "So much suffering, so much loss." Kelly watched the screens with a heavy heart. She had seen similar images in Earth's history books, but seeing the pain of entire civilizations was overwhelming. "There's got to be a purpose to this. The station wouldn't show us this without a reason." The screens began to flicker, and new images appeared. These showed acts of kindness, moments of beauty, and species helping each other across the void of space. Kelly realized what the station was asking. "It wants us to find hope in the darkness," she said. "It wants us to prove that we can see the good even when surrounded by evil." Back in the central core, Alex had an idea. Instead of trying to solve the puzzle logically, he closed his eyes and let his instincts guide him. He reached out and touched one of the floating shapes. It was warm and smooth like polished stone. "Captain, what are you doing?" Dr. Phillips asked nervously. Something stupid, Alex replied. But sometimes stupid works. He began moving the shapes not according to mathematical logic, but according to what felt right. The shapes seemed to respond to his touch, moving more easily when he followed his instincts rather than his mind. Dr. Phillips watched in amazement as the puzzle began to solve itself. The shapes aligned in patterns that were beautiful rather than logical, and suddenly the chamber filled with golden light. How did you know? Phillips asked. I didn't, Alex admitted. I just did what felt human. The challenges continued throughout the station. Each test seemed designed to push the crew members beyond their normal limits. The alien crew members approached each challenge with the methods their species had perfected over millions of years. They were logical, efficient, and careful. The humans were none of those things. Tony solved engineering problems by talking to the machines like they were pets. Kelly established communication with the station's AI by treating it like a lonely child. Alex navigated puzzles by ignoring logic and following his gut. But the biggest challenge was yet to come. As the teams reunited in the central chamber, the station's voice spoke again. Final evaluation commencing. Prepare for the ultimate test. The walls of the chamber became transparent, revealing the void of space beyond. But this wasn't empty space. It was filled with creatures that seemed to be made of pure darkness. They moved like liquid shadow, and just looking at them made the crew members feel cold and afraid. What are those things? Kelly whispered. Whisper of Stars' psychic abilities gave her the answer, and her voice shook with terror. They are the Devourers. They consume life force itself. They are the enemy of all living things. The alien crew members backed away from the transparent walls. Every instinct their species had developed over millions of years told them to run. The Devourers were apex predators, beings that had evolved to hunt and destroy everything they encountered. But the humans reacted differently. Dr. Phillips immediately began scanning the creatures, looking for weaknesses. Tony started examining the station's defensive systems. Kelly tried to establish communication, wondering if the beings could be reasoned with. Alex studied the Devourers with the cold calculation of a soldier. How many? He asked. Approximately 50, Telkar replied, his voice shaking. Captain, we must retreat. These beings cannot be fought. They are death itself. Alex looked at his human crew members and saw the same expression on all their faces. It wasn't fear, it was determination. While the aliens saw unstoppable monsters, the humans saw a problem to be solved. No, Alex said quietly, we're not running. The station's voice spoke one final time. The test begins now. Survive or die. There is no other option. The transparent walls disappeared, and the Devourers poured into the chamber like a tide of living darkness. The alien crew members screamed and tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. The humans stood their ground. Tony grabbed an energy weapon from the station's emergency supplies. I've always wanted to know what these things are afraid of, he said, with a grin that was more frightening than the monsters they faced. Kelly activated her communication equipment. Maybe they're not evil, maybe they're just hungry. Dr. Phillips pulled out his scanner. Everything has a weakness. We just need to find it. Alex drew his sidearm and checked the power cell. All right, people. Let's show these things what happens when you mess with humans. The Devourers rushed toward them, expecting easy prey. They had consumed thousands of species over millions of years, and none had ever fought back effectively. They were about to learn that humans were different. The battle that followed would change everything the galaxy thought they knew about humanity. The crew members who had been sent to prove themselves worthy of galactic citizenship were about to become something much more important. They were about to become the galaxy's protectors. The entropy swarm arrived 18 months early. Long-range sensors detected the first signs at the galaxy's edge. Entire star systems simply vanished from the night sky, leaving empty space where billions of lives had existed moments before. The swarm moved faster than anyone had predicted, consuming everything in its path with terrifying efficiency. Admiral Helen Brooks stood in the command center of the newly constructed Human Defense Station, watching the reports flood in from across the galaxy? The woman who had once been a simple fleet commander was now in charge of the largest military force in galactic history. Every species that had once debated humanity's worthiness now looked to them for salvation. "How many ships do we have?" she asked her aide. 12,000 vessels from across the galaxy, came the reply. The Keth have contributed their ancient dreadnoughts, the Andromedans have provided their finest cruisers, and the Hive Collective has sent their entire swarm fleet. Helen nodded grimly. It sounded impressive, but she knew it wouldn't be enough. The entropy swarm had consumed hundreds of galaxies. No conventional force could stop it. Captain Rodriguez had survived the Nexus station and now commanded the UES Defiance, the most advanced warship ever built. The ship combined human ingenuity with architect technology, creating something that was both beautiful and terrifying. He stood on the bridge, surrounded by a mixed crew of humans and aliens who had learned to work together. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Nancy Cole, the ship's tactical officer, "we're receiving the final battle orders from Admiral Brooks." The plan was simple in its madness. The human fleet would not try to fight the entropy swarm conventionally. Instead, they would do what humans did best. They would do the impossible, the swarm's weakness. Discovered in the Architect archives was its central consciousness. It was a hive mind that controlled billions of individual creatures across light years of space. If they could destroy the central node, the entire swarm would collapse. The problem was that the node was protected by the most dangerous creatures in the universe, and reaching it would require flying directly into the heart of the swarm. "It's a suicide mission," Dr. Phillips had told the planning committee. "Whoever goes in won't come back." "Then we better make it count," Admiral Brooks had replied. The final battle began at the galaxy's core, where the entropy swarm had established its beachhead. The human fleet arrived to find a sight that defied description. The swarm had consumed dozens of star systems and was using their matter to build a massive structure that pulsed with dark energy. The alien fleets engaged the swarm's outer defenses, buying time for the human ships to reach the central node. The battle was unlike anything in galactic history. Ships the size of cities fought creatures made of living darkness. Energy weapons that could shatter moons barely scratched the swarm's soldiers, but the humans had learned something important. From their encounter with the Devourers, the entropy swarm fed on fear and despair. The more afraid their enemies were, the stronger they became. So the humans did something that shocked their alien allies. They started laughing. Tony Barnes, now chief engineer of the Defiance, worked frantically to keep the ship's systems running while explosions rocked the hull around him. "You know what?" he called out to his team. "I always wanted to see what the end of the galaxy looked like." His team laughed and worked harder. The fear that should have paralyzed them was replaced by something the swarm couldn't understand: joy. In the face of certain death, Kelly Wright, now the fleet's chief communications officer, broadcast messages of hope and defiance across all frequencies. "This is humanity calling all ships. We're not dying today, we're living." The effect was immediate. The alien crews, inspired by human courage, began to fight with renewed determination. The swarm's creatures, deprived of the fear they fed on, began to weaken, but the real surprise came when the Defiance made its final approach to the central node. The ship was damaged, its crew reduced to half strength, and its weapons nearly depleted. Any sane species would have retreated. Captain Rodriguez gave the order that would be remembered for the rest of galactic history. "All hands, prepare for ramming speed." The Defiance accelerated toward the heart of the swarm, its hull groaning under the strain. The ship's computer warned that collision was inevitable, but nobody tried to change course. In the final moments, Rodriguez opened a channel to the Galaxy Council. "This is Captain Alex Rodriguez of the UES Defiance. We came to your galaxy as strangers asking for acceptance. We're leaving as your protectors." The ship struck the central node at near light speed. The explosion was visible from halfway across the galaxy. The architect weapons aboard the Defiance, combined with the ship's fusion reactors, created a chain reaction that tore through the Swarm's consciousness like fire through paper. The effect was immediate and total. Across the galaxy, the entropy swarm's creatures stopped moving. The dark energy that had powered them for millions of years flickered and died. The greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced was gone, but the cost was devastating. Nearly 3/4 of the human fleet was destroyed in the battle. Entire generations of Earth's finest soldiers, scientists, and explorers were gone. The survivors returned to a galaxy that had been forever changed. The species that had once debated humanity's fitness for citizenship now built monuments to human sacrifice. The Galaxy Council chamber was redesigned with a special section reserved for human delegates, not because they were members, but because they were recognized as the galaxy's protectors. Jake Morrison, now old and gray, stood before the council one final time. The debate that had started with questions about human violence had ended with the understanding that sometimes violence was necessary. "You were right to fear us," he said to the assembled delegates. "We are dangerous. We are unpredictable. We do things that make no sense to anyone else." The chamber was silent. Every delegate knew that without those dangerous, unpredictable humans, they would all be dead. "But we are also the reason your children will see tomorrow," Jake continued. "We are the species that stands between you and the darkness. We are the ones who run toward danger instead of away from it." Speaker Vexthera rose from her throne. "The debate is over. Humanity has earned something greater than citizenship. You have earned our eternal gratitude." The vote was unanimous. The Human Protectorate was established as a permanent organization, dedicated to defending the galaxy from threats that conventional forces couldn't handle. It would be staffed by volunteers from every species, but it would always be led by humans. As the ceremony ended and the delegates filed out, Jake stood alone in the empty chamber. The debate that had brought him here was over, but humanity's real work was just beginning. Somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, other threats were stirring. The entropy swarm was gone, but it was not the only danger in the universe. The galaxy would need its protectors again, and the humans would be ready. The battle lasted 3 hours and changed everything. The Devourers came at them like a wave of liquid darkness, expecting to drain the life from another group of helpless prey. They had done this countless times before across the galaxy. Every species they had encountered either fled in terror or died screaming. The Devourers had never met resistance. They had never met humans. Tony Barnes was the first to strike. Instead of running from the creatures, he ran toward them. His energy weapon blazed in his hands as he shouted at the top of his lungs, "Come on, you ugly things! Let's see what you're made of!" The Devourers paused, confused. In millions of years of existence, no prey had ever charged at them. They hesitated for just a moment, and that moment was all Tony needed. His weapon tore through the nearest creature, and it screamed in a voice that sounded like breaking glass. Dr. Phillips worked frantically at his scanner while the battle raged around him. "They're energy beings," he shouted. "They feed on fear and life force, but they have a solid core. If we can hit that core, we can kill them." Kelly Wright did something that shocked everyone, including herself. She started talking to the Devourers. "Why are you doing this? What do you want? There has to be a reason." One of the creatures stopped attacking and turned toward her. Its voice was like the sound of wind through a graveyard. "We hunger, we consume, it is our nature." "Then let's find you something else to eat," Kelly said. Her voice steady despite her fear. The alien crew members watched in horror and amazement as the humans fought back. Telkar tried to understand what he was seeing. "This is impossible. They are fighting death itself." Whisper of stars floated in her chamber, her psychic abilities overwhelmed by the chaos around her. "Their minds are like fire. They burn so bright that the darkness cannot touch them." Captain Rodriguez coordinated the defense with the calm precision of a military commander. He had fought in border wars and peacekeeping missions across human space, but nothing had prepared him for this. Still, he adapted quickly. "Tony, keep them busy on the left side. Kelly, see if you can get more information from that one that's talking. Phillips, find me a weakness we can exploit." The humans fought. with a combination of courage and intelligence that the Devourers had never encountered. They used the station's defensive systems, improvised weapons from broken equipment, and tactics that made no logical sense but somehow worked. But the real surprise came when they started winning. The Devourers began to retreat, something they had never done before. The creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years were being driven back by a small group of humans, who refused to give up. As the last of the Devourers fled back into the void, the station's voice spoke. Again. But this time it sounded different. Ancient and tired, but also relieved. Test completed, accessing historical records, uploading data to crew members. The knowledge hit them like a physical blow. Images, information, and memories that were not their own flooded into their minds. They saw the rise and fall of civilizations, the spread of the Devourers across the galaxy, and the desperate search for a species that could stand against them. Dr. Phillips staggered as the information settled in his mind. The architects. They were the species that built this station. They were looking for protectors. Protectors of what? Alex asked, though he was starting to understand. Everything, Phillips replied. The Devourers are scouts. They're the advance guard for something much worse. Something called the entropy swarm. The station's holographic display activated, showing them images that made their blood run cold. The entropy swarm was a force of pure destruction that moved from galaxy to galaxy, consuming everything in its path. It left nothing behind, no planets, no stars, no life, just empty space. The architects evolved beyond physical form to escape, the station's voice explained. But they knew the swarm would return. They designed this station to find a species capable of fighting what they could not. Kelly looked around at her human teammates. And they think we're that species? You are the first to pass the test, the station replied. Your species possesses the necessary combination of intelligence, adaptability, and most importantly, the willingness to fight impossible odds. Talkar's logical mind struggled to process this information. How long do we have? The entropy swarm will arrive in approximately 50 years, the station replied. The galaxy must prepare. Back on Centauri Prime, the Galaxy Council was in chaos. The monitoring stations had gone silent hours ago, and everyone assumed the worst. The test mission had been a disaster, and the humans were probably dead. Then the emergency beacon activated. Jake Morrison stood before the assembled delegates once again, but this time his message was different. The transmission from the Nexus station played on the giant screens, showing the human crew fighting the Devourers with a ferocity that shocked the alien delegates. This is what you were afraid of, Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. You were right to fear us. We are dangerous, we are unpredictable, we are violent. The chamber erupted in noise as delegates demanded explanations. Some called for humanity to be contained immediately. Others argued for their immediate exile from galactic space. Jake waited for silence, then continued. But now you know why we are the way we are. We are not conquerors, we are protectors. We are the species that stands between you and the darkness. Elder. Zephalon rose slowly from his seat. The test was supposed to evaluate your fitness for citizenship. Instead, it has revealed that you are something far more dangerous than we imagined. Yes, Jake agreed, we are. But we are also the only hope you have. The transmission from the Nexus station continued, showing the human crew accessing the architect archives and learning about the coming threat. The delegates watched in stunned silence as the scope of the danger became clear. Speaker Vexthara finally spoke. If this is true, then the debate about human membership is irrelevant. The question now is whether we can trust you to protect us from this entropy swarm. Jake looked around the chamber at thousands of alien faces. Some showed fear, others showed hope, and a few showed something that might have been respect. You don't have to trust us, he said simply. But you do have to let us prepare. The swarm is coming whether we're ready or not. The only question is whether we'll face it together or separately. The debate that had started with questions about human violence and unpredictability had become something much larger. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous species is also the most necessary one. In the depths of space, the entropy swarm stirred. It had detected the disruption in the galactic order and was moving faster than expected. The test was over, but the real challenge was just beginning. The humans had proven they could fight the darkness, but could they unite a galaxy that was afraid of them? Could they become the protectors the architects had searched for across millions of years? The answer would determine the fate of every living thing in the galaxy.